The $4.2 million hypercar sat dying under downtown streetlights, white smoke pouring from its vents like a wounded animal bleeding out. Anthony Wright stood beside his quantum apex, phone pressed to his ear. The manufacturer's voice was final. "Mr. Wright, that cooling system cannot be repaired outside our Berlin facility. Any attempt will void. I can fix it." The voice came from the sidewalk. Anthony turned. A black man in a torn jacket stood 10 feet away, gray threading his beard, eyes sharp behind smudged glasses. Security stepped forward. Marcus, Anthony's assistant, sneered. "Sir, ignore him." Bystanders filmed on phones. Someone laughed. The man didn't move, just watched the steam rising, head tilted like he was reading a language no one else could see. Engine temp, 347 degrees, critical failure in 8 minutes. What would you do if the expert looked nothing like one? 3 years earlier, Thomas Johnson had owned a different life. MIT class of 2009, thermal engineering, 14 patents to his name before he turned 35. His work on quantum cooling systems had transformed aerospace manufacturing, reduced energy waste in semiconductor production by 42%, and earned him a corner office at Helion Advanced Systems. Then came the accusation: intellectual property theft. A colleague claimed Thomas had stolen proprietary designs. The claim was absurd. Thomas had designed the systems himself, filed the patents under the company's name per his contract. But the colleague was white, well-connected, and convincing. Legal fees devoured Thomas's savings in 4 months. The case was dismissed eventually, but the damage was permanent. No apology, no retraction, just silence. Blacklisted, unhirable. The engineering world moved on without him. Now Thomas lived in the 4th Street shelter, sleeping on a cot that smelled like industrial cleaner and decades of desperation. He'd been homeless for 1,096 days. He kept count. Every morning at 6, he woke to the fluorescent hum of the shelter's main hall. He folded his blanket with hospital corners, old habits, and stored his belongings in a plastic bin. 3 shirts, 2 pairs of pants, a winter coat with a broken zipper, toiletries, and 1 item that didn't belong in a homeless man's inventory. His MIT student ID, laminated and worn at the edges, kept in a Ziploc bag along with a folded printout. The printout listed his 14 patents in small text. He never showed it to anyone. What would be the point? But he kept it. After breakfast, oatmeal, weak coffee, Thomas walked to Morrison Park. The east bench, near the broken fountain. That's where the kids found him. "Mr. Thomas!" 7-year-old Maya ran ahead of her brother, backpack bouncing. Her mother worked double shifts at the hospital. The shelter's after-school program let kids come early, and Thomas had become their unofficial science teacher. "Can you show us the thing with water again?" Maya asked. Thomas smiled. He pulled a piece of sidewalk chalk from his pocket, donated box from the shelter, and knelt on the concrete. His knees protested. He ignored them. "Phase change diagrams," he said, drawing. "Water becomes ice at 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Ice becomes water at the same temperature. Energy moves, but the temperature stays constant during the change. That's called latent heat." Maya's brother, Jordan, squinted at the drawing. "Why?" "Because molecules are dancing," Thomas said. "In water, they slide around each other. In ice, they lock in place. The energy it takes to break those locks. That's what we measure." He drew more. Cooling curves, energy graphs, molecular structures. The children watched, silent and focused. Other shelter residents walked past. Some nodded at Thomas, others looked away. Thomas taught every afternoon he could. Math, physics, chemistry. He used napkins, cardboard, anything. Once he'd built a simple lever system from popsicle sticks to demonstrate mechanical advantage. Maya had carried it around for a week like treasure. You should be a teacher, she'd said. Thomas had just smiled. After the kids left, Thomas walked to the public library. The librarian, Mrs. Bapti Chen, no relation to Dr. Helena Chen, though Thomas always thought of the coincidence, let him use the computers for 2 hours. He read technical journals, MIT OpenCourseWare, RxIV preprints on thermodynamics. His mind was still sharp. Some days that felt like a curse. He couldn't afford journal subscriptions, so he relied on free resources and discarded industry magazines he found in recycling bins outside corporate offices. Last month, he'd pulled a copy of Advanced Cooling Quarterly from the trash behind a tech consulting firm. Inside, an article about the Quantum Apex hypercar's revolutionary cooling system. Thomas had read it twice. Then he'd written notes in the margins of his engineering notebook, the same notebook he'd carried since grad school, pages filled with 15 years of calculations, observations, design ideas. The Quantum Apex's system was impressive, but it had a flaw, a pressure valve defect in the primary coolant loop, the kind of issue that wouldn't appear in testing but would surface after extended high-performance use. He'd filed a warning about this exact failure mode in 2019, back when he still had access to industry databases. Nobody had listened then. Now here he was, standing on a downtown sidewalk at 11 o'clock at night, watching a billionaire's $4.2 million car destroy itself from the inside out because of the exact flaw Thomas had predicted. The irony tasted like copper. Thomas pulled his coat tighter. The November wind cut through the torn fabric. He'd skipped dinner tonight. The shelter's food line had been too long, and he'd wanted to walk, to think, to breathe air that didn't smell like 100 people sleeping in one room. Now he watched the Quantum Apex die, and he knew exactly how to save it. The question was whether anyone would let him try. Security moved closer. The guard's hand hovered near Thomas's shoulder, not touching yet, but the threat was clear. Marcus stepped between Thomas and Anthony. "Sir, we're calling the real engineers. Stuttgart's sending their top technician on the next flight." 12 hours, Anthony said quietly. Better than letting some... Marcus caught himself. Better than trusting someone unqualified. Thomas stayed calm. He'd learned that in 3 years on the street. Anger got you nowhere. Facts did. The quantum coolant loop has a pressure valve defect, Thomas said. 3rd-generation thermal management system, right? The valve's tolerance margin is 0.03 millimeters too narrow. Under sustained high performance, thermal expansion creates a cascade failure. I filed the warning in 2019. Marcus pulled out his phone, fingers moving fast. There's nothing in the database about... Check the archived engineering bulletins, Thomas said. September 2019, Helion Advanced Systems. The crowd had grown. 20 people now, phones out, recording. Someone whispered. Others watched in silence. Marcus shook his head. Nothing. Thomas reached into his coat pocket. Slowly, security was still watching. He pulled out a folded paper, creased and worn, protected in a plastic sleeve. He unfolded it carefully. A technical bulletin. Official letterhead. Helion Advanced Systems. Date, September 17, 2019. Subject, pressure valve, tolerance warning, quantum coolant applications. At the bottom, a signature. Thomas R. Johnson, Principal Engineer, Thermal Systems Division. He held it out. Marcus took it, eyes scanning. His expression shifted. Just slightly. He looked at Thomas, then at the paper, then back at Thomas. Anthony stepped forward. Let me see that. The engine temp gauge hit 359 degrees. The Quantum Apex had maybe 5 minutes before permanent damage. Anthony read the bulletin, looked at Thomas, read it again. Why do you have this? Thomas met his eyes. Because I wrote it. Anthony stared at the bulletin, then at Thomas. The crowd pressed closer, phones raised. If you wrote this, Anthony said slowly, Then you know the system. Better than anyone, Marcus scoffed. Sir, this could be fake. We can't. Fake? Thomas gestured at the smoking car. Your engine's at 362 degrees. In 4 minutes, the coolant will flash boil. The pressure spike will crack the quantum chamber housing. That's a factory replacement, 6 months minimum. Or you can give me 20 minutes. Anthony's jaw tightened. He looked at the car, at his watch, at Thomas. What do you need? Ice, aluminum foil, 16-gauge copper wire, adjustable wrench, needle nose pliers. Marcus laughed. You're going to fix a $4 million hypercar with corner store supplies? Yes. The certainty in Thomas's voice cut through the mockery. Anthony pulled out his wallet, handed Thomas 2 20s. Thomas looked at the bills. $40. More than he'd held in 3 months. I'll pay you back, he said quietly. Just fix the car. Thomas walked fast. The 7-Eleven was 2 blocks away, fluorescent and bright. He grabbed 3 bags of ice, foil, wire from the hardware section. The clerk rang him up. $32. Thomas counted out the bills, added $8 from his own pocket, his only money, saved from returning bottles. He'd planned to buy food tomorrow. Back at the car, Thomas knelt on the cold pavement. His hands shook slightly. Low blood sugar. He ignored it. Someone get me a clean rag, he said. A woman from the crowd stepped forward, handed him a gym towel. Thomas nodded thanks. He worked methodically, opened the rear thermal access panel. The manufacturer didn't advertise its location, but Thomas had designed the predecessor system. He knew every bolt. The crowd watched in silence. Marcus muttered, "Street theater." Thomas ignored him. He packed ice around the primary coolant reservoir, used foil to create a reflective barrier, rerouted the secondary cooling line with copper wire to bypass the defective valve. His fingers moved with precision despite the tremor. The engineering was simple: fundamental thermodynamics. Reduce heat input, increase thermal mass, redirect flow. No exotic materials needed. Just physics and understanding. 12 minutes in, someone asked, "Is it working?" Thomas didn't answer. He was watching the pressure gauge through the access panel, waiting for the reading to stabilize. 14 minutes. The gauge dropped. 358. 354. 16 minutes. 342. Thomas closed the panel, tightened the last bolt. He stood slowly, knees protesting, wiped his hands on the towel. "Start it." Anthony hesitated. Then moved to the driver's door, slid behind the wheel. The crowd held its breath. He turned the key. The engine purred, smooth, clean, no smoke, no grinding. The dashboard displays flickered to life, showing green across every system. Coolant pressure, optimal. Temperature, steady at 320. Flow rate, normal. Someone in the crowd whispered, "Holy shit." Anthony stared at the gauges. At the rearview mirror, where he could see Thomas standing motionless on the sidewalk, hands in pockets, expression neutral. Marcus walked to the front of the car, bent to look at the engine display. His face went pale. "The diagnostics," he said quietly. "They're better than factory specs." Anthony stepped out of the car. The engine idled perfectly, a sound like silk over steel. He looked at Thomas for a long moment. "Who are you?" Thomas almost smiled. "You wouldn't have believed me an hour ago. Try me now." Before Thomas could answer, Marcus spoke up. "Sir, we should verify this. The diagnostics might be false readings." Anthony pulled out his phone. "Then we verify." He scrolled through contacts, pressed dial, put it on speaker. 3 rings. A woman's voice answered, professional and clipped. "Anthony, it's almost midnight." "Dr. Chen, I need to ask you something." "Make it quick." "The Quantum Apex's cooling system. Who designed the core technology?" Silence on the line. Then, The thermal management architecture? That was Thomas Johnson. Brilliant engineer. His work at Helion was groundbreaking. Why? Anthony looked at Thomas. Where is he now? I don't know. He left the industry 3, maybe 4 years ago. There was some kind of dispute. Corporate politics, I think. Why are you asking? What did he look like? Black man, early 40s, glasses, intense. Could explain quantum thermodynamics like he was describing how to make coffee. Anthony, what's this about? The crowd had gone completely silent, phone still recording. Thomas stood motionless, hands in his coat pockets. Anthony turned the phone toward Thomas. Dr. Chen, I'm going to send you a photo. Tell me if this is Thomas Johnson. He snapped a picture. Sent it. 10 seconds of silence. Then Dr. Chen's voice came back, quieter now. That's him. Older, but that's Thomas. Where did you find him? He just saved my car, on a downtown street corner. What? Thomas is... A pause. Put him on. Anthony held the phone out. Thomas hesitated, then took it. Dr. Chen. Thomas. Her voice carried something between relief and sadness. Where have you been? Around. I heard about the accusations. I tried to reach you. Your number was disconnected. Lost a lot of things, Thomas said simply. The charges were dropped. My reputation wasn't. Dr. Chen was quiet for a moment. I'm sorry. I should have done more. You did what you could. Thomas handed the phone back to Anthony. Anthony took it, still processing. Dr. Chen, send me everything you have on Thomas Johnson's work. Everything. I'll email it now. The call ended. Anthony's phone buzzed almost immediately. He opened the email. 5 attachments, patent documents, technical papers, engineering reports. He opened the first one. Patent filing 2018. Quantum thermal management system for high-performance applications. Primary inventor, Thomas R. Johnson. The photo on the filing showed a younger Thomas in a clean suit, confident smile, MIT ring visible on his hand. Anthony scrolled. Another patent. Another. Each one listing Thomas as lead inventor or primary contributor. The technical language was dense, but the implications were clear. The man standing in front of him, wearing a torn jacket and second-hand shoes, had revolutionized cooling technology for an entire industry. Marcus was reading over Anthony's shoulder. His face had lost all color. Sir, I didn't... Not now. Anthony walked to Thomas. Why didn't you say who you were? Thomas looked at him with tired eyes. Would you have listened? The question hung in the cold air. Phone still recording. The crowd pressing closer. Anthony had no answer, because they both knew the truth. If Thomas had walked up in that jacket with that beard and said, I'm Thomas Johnson, MIT thermal engineer, and I can fix your car, security would have dragged him away in 30 seconds. But now the car was running. The diagnostics were perfect. And Dr. Helena Chen's email sat open on Anthony's phone, filled with proof that the homeless man in front of him was one of the most accomplished engineers in his field. Anthony looked at the car, at Thomas, at the crowd. How much do I owe you? Thomas pulled the crumpled bills from his pocket. $32 in change and receipts. These are yours. Marcus stepped forward, voice sharp. Wait. We need to verify this actually works. Long term, not just for 5 minutes. Anthony frowned. The car is running. Running and safe are different things. Sir, with respect, we need a full diagnostic sequence. Stress test. If this fails at high performance... It won't, Thomas said quietly. Prove it. Marcus crossed his arms. Take it through a full acceleration cycle. Push the cooling system. Let's see if this genius repair actually holds. The crowd murmured. Someone called out, Yeah, let's see it. Anthony looked at Thomas. Will it hold? Yes. You're certain? I designed the system it's based on. This repair is more efficient than the original configuration. Marcus scoffed. Then you won't mind demonstrating. Thomas walked to the driver's door. Anthony handed him the key fob. Their eyes met. You're trusting me with a $4 million car, Thomas said. You already saved it. Thomas slid into the driver's seat. The leather still held warmth from Anthony. The steering wheel felt foreign in his hands. It had been 3 years since he'd driven anything. The dashboard glowed, every display showing optimal readings. He pressed the start button. The engine's hum deepened. Marcus leaned close to the window. Full acceleration. 60 seconds. Let's see what breaks. Thomas said nothing. He shifted into drive, rolled forward 20 feet to clear the crowd. Then he stopped, foot on brake, watching the thermal management display. He pressed the accelerator. The quantum apex surged, 0 to 60 in 2.1 seconds. The G-force pressed Thomas back into the seat. He held it, watching the gauges. Coolant temperature rising but controlled. Pressure stable. Flow rate adjusting perfectly. 30 seconds, 40, 50. At 60 seconds, he released. The car glided to a stop. Thomas shifted to park. Checked the diagnostics one more time. Coolant temp, 328 degrees. Optimal range. Pressure, green. No fluctuations. No warnings. He stepped out, walked back to Anthony, handed him the key fob. Marcus was already at the hood, staring at the diagnostic readout on his tablet. His mouth opened, closed. Efficiency increased by 11%, Marcus said, voice hollow. Heat dissipation improved, response time faster than factory baseline. The crowd erupted. Thomas just stood there, hands in his pockets, saying nothing. Anthony didn't let Thomas leave. There's a diner 2 blocks over, he said. You're having breakfast. My treat. Thomas hesitated. It's almost midnight. They serve breakfast all day. The diner was called Maryland's. Chrome and red vinyl booths, smell of coffee and bacon grease. The waitress looked twice at Thomas but said nothing. Anthony ordered coffee. Thomas ordered water, then quietly added eggs and toast when Anthony insisted. They sat across from each other. Anthony studied Thomas in the fluorescent light. The torn jacket, the gray in his beard, the sharp intelligence in his eyes that no amount of poverty could hide. Tell me what happened, Anthony said. Thomas drank his water slowly. You really want to know? I just watched you save a hypercar with ice and aluminum foil. Yes, I want to know. So Thomas told him. The accusation came in March 2022. A colleague named David Brennan claimed Thomas had stolen proprietary designs for a new thermal regulation system. The system was actually Thomas's work. His notebooks proved it, his emails proved it, his patent applications proved it. But Brennan had connections. His uncle sat on Helion's board. His wife worked in legal. The company launched an internal investigation, HR interviews, depositions. Thomas was suspended with pay while they reviewed the evidence. They found nothing, Thomas said, because there was nothing to find. But the damage was done. The investigation took 4 months. Thomas's legal fees hit $40,000. His savings evaporated. His reputation in the industry became toxic. People avoided him at conferences, stopped returning emails. When Helion finally cleared him in July, there was no public announcement. No apology, just a brief letter stating the investigation was closed. Thomas pulled a folded paper from his jacket. Different from the technical bulletin, this one was on legal letterhead. To whom it may concern. The internal investigation regarding Thomas Johnson has been concluded. No evidence of misconduct was found. This matter is now closed. That was it. No admission of error. No restoration of his position. No acknowledgement of the 4 months of hell they'd put him through. They offered me my job back, Thomas said. Different department. 20% pay cut. No explanation. You didn't take it. Would you? Anthony was quiet. Thomas continued. I tried other companies. Every application went nowhere. The industry's small. Word spreads. Doesn't matter that the charges were dropped. People remember the accusation, not the dismissal. By December 2022, Thomas's unemployment benefits ran out. By February 2023, he'd burned through his last savings paying rent. By April, he was sleeping in his car. By June, he'd sold the car to eat. The 4th Street shelter became home. I never stopped studying, Thomas said. Library computers, discarded journals. I kept learning because that's all I had left. The waitress brought food. Thomas ate slowly, like someone who'd learned to make meals last. Anthony watched him. Why didn't you fight back, publicly? Media, lawyers. With what money? Thomas met his eyes. And who would listen? A black engineer claiming he was wrongly accused by a white colleague with family connections? That's not a story. That's a statistic. The words landed heavy. I filed complaints, Thomas continued. EEOC, State Labor Board. Everything got dismissed. Insufficient evidence of discrimination. Brennan's still at Helion, Senior VP now. Anthony set down his coffee cup. The system that destroyed your career, I used their components in my manufacturing division. I know. You knew, and you still fixed my car. Thomas looked at him steadily. The car didn't do anything wrong. Outside, the city moved through its midnight rhythms. Inside the diner, 2 men sat in silence, separated by $4 million and 3 years of injustice. Finally, Anthony spoke. I want to fix this. 3 days later, Thomas stood in a glass conference room 40 stories above the city. Anthony had bought him a suit, charcoal gray, tailored. Thomas barely recognized himself in the mirror. The shelter's bathroom didn't have one, and he'd stopped looking at his reflection months ago. You don't have to do this, Anthony had said that morning. Yes, I do. Now he faced 12 investors seated around an oak table. Wright Industries' quarterly tech summit. These people controlled $400 million in venture capital. They looked at Thomas with polite skepticism. Anthony had introduced him as a consulting engineer, nothing more. Marcus stood by the projection screen, converted now. He'd apologized to Thomas privately. I judged you. I was wrong. The presentation began. New cooling technologies for AI server farms. 3 prototypes, each backed by a different startup seeking Wright Industries funding. First prototype, liquid immersion cooling. The founder, a Stanford PhD named Rachel Kim, walked them through efficiency metrics. Impressive numbers. The investors nodded. Thomas raised his hand. Yes, Rachel said. Your viscosity calculations assume constant ambient temperature. Server farms fluctuate. Your fluid will degrade within 8 months under thermal cycling. The seals will fail. Silence. Rachel's face tightened. Our testing shows... Your testing was 6 months in controlled conditions. Real-world deployment is different. One investor, a woman named Patricia Valdez, leaned forward. That's a bold claim. Can you prove it? Thomas walked to the whiteboard, started writing equations, heat transfer coefficients, material stress analysis, degradation curves. His handwriting was precise, each variable clearly marked. Your fluid's thermal expansion coefficient interacts poorly with your seal material above 90 degrees Celsius. That's your operating threshold. Every cycle weakens the molecular bonds. Catastrophic failure probability exceeds 60% by month 9. Rachel pulled up her data on the screen, checked the numbers. Her expression changed. He's right, she said quietly. We didn't model long-term cycling. Second prototype. Phase change cooling using specialized polymers. The founder, James Ortega, presented confidently. Patents pending. Revolutionary approach. Thomas waited until the presentation ended. Your polymer transitions at 47 degrees Celsius. Your target cooling range is 40 to 65 degrees. You're operating across your phase boundary under normal conditions. That creates latent heat management problems. Energy efficiency drops by 30%. James blinked. How do you... Basic thermodynamics. Your material choice is elegant but impractical for this application. Third prototype, micro-channel cooling arrays. This one was more sophisticated. The founder, Dr. Alan Chen, had clearly done deep research. Thomas studied the specifications for 90 seconds. Micro-channel width is 60 micrometers. At your target flow rate, you'll hit Reynolds number transition zone. Turbulent flow will create pressure spikes. Your channels will crack within 3 months of continuous operation. Dr. Chen stared at him. Nobody else caught that. Nobody else designed micro-channel systems for aerospace applications, Thomas said. Patricia Valdez set down her pen. Mr. Johnson, you've identified critical flaws in 3 different technologies in under an hour. That's impressive, but critique is easy. Can you build better? The logic trap was set. Thomas recognized it immediately. Anyone can tear down, Patricia continued. Show us you can create. Thomas looked at Anthony. A slight nod. I already have, Thomas said. Marcus switched the projection. A patent document filled the screen. Adaptive Quantum Thermal Regulation System. Filed, March 2018. Primary inventor, Thomas R. Johnson. The document showed detailed schematics. A cooling system that used variable geometry microchannels, adaptive phase change materials, and predictive thermal modeling. 7 years old, but the design was still ahead of current technology. This is the foundation architecture, Thomas said, that all 3 prototypes are trying to replicate. Dr. Chen's microchannels? I designed the optimization algorithm in 2019. Mr. Ortega's phase change approach? I published the theoretical framework in 2017. Ms. Kim's immersion cooling? I identified the seal degradation problem in my original research notes. He walked to the screen, pointed at a specific section. This patent predicted the exact problems you're seeing now, not because I'm clever, because I spent 12 years studying thermal dynamics at every scale from quantum to industrial. Patricia looked at the document, at Thomas, back at the document. Why haven't we heard of you? Because 3 years ago I was falsely accused of stealing my own work. I was cleared. But my career was destroyed anyway. I've been homeless since 2023. The room went silent. Rachel spoke first. The Thomas Johnson? The MIT thermal engineer? We studied your work in graduate school. Then you know I'm not guessing. James pulled up Thomas's patent on his tablet, scrolling through pages. This design solves the problems we've been struggling with for 2 years. Dr. Chen was nodding slowly. The predictive modeling section alone is worth millions in development savings. Patricia set both hands on the table. Mr. Johnson, why are you here? Thomas looked at Anthony. Because he asked me to show you what you've been missing, Thomas said, and what you keep missing. Anthony's office overlooked the harbor, floor-to-ceiling windows, minimalist furniture, air that smelled like leather and expensive coffee. Thomas stood by the window, still wearing the borrowed suit. I want to hire you, Anthony said. Chief Technology Officer, Wright Industries, salary, benefits, equity. You'd oversee all our thermal and cooling divisions. Thomas didn't turn around. That's generous. It's practical. You're the best in the field. I was homeless 4 days ago. And now you're not. Thomas finally looked at Anthony. What about the others? What others? The ones still sleeping in shelters, still invisible. How many brilliant people are out there because they're not in the right room, because they don't look right, sound right, know the right people? Anthony was quiet. Thomas pulled his engineering notebook from his jacket pocket. Worn pages, crammed with calculations. He opened it near the back. A list of names, 23 entries, each with a notation. Sarah Chen, Electrical Engineering Ph.D., UC Berkeley, 4th Street Shelter. Marcus Rivera, Chemical Engineering, Georgia Tech, St. Mary's Bridge. Jennifer Williams, Materials Science, Northwestern, Women's Haven. "I've met them," Thomas said. "Teaching kids at shelters, talking in libraries. They're chemists, programmers, mathematicians, all brilliant, all forgotten." He closed the notebook. "You want to fix what happened to me? That's one person. I want to fix the system that creates 1,000 people like me." Anthony stepped closer. "What are you proposing?" "I don't know yet. But hiring me doesn't solve the problem. It just makes you feel better." The words hung in the air. Honest. Unflinching. Anthony looked at the notebook in Thomas's hands. "Then let's figure it out together," he said. "What does it mean to fix a system, not just a car?" Wright Industries headquarters, main atrium. 20 journalists, cameras, recorders. The announcement had been cryptic. Major leadership appointment. Anthony stood at the podium. Thomas waited off stage, the borrowed suit feeling like armor. "3 weeks ago," Anthony began, "my car broke down. A $4 million hypercar with a cooling system failure. The manufacturer said it couldn't be fixed outside their facility. They were wrong." He pressed a button. The screen behind him showed the downtown street. Thomas kneeling by the quantum apex, hands working. The footage was from a bystander's phone. A homeless man fixed it in 20 minutes, using ice and aluminum foil. Murmurs rippled through the journalists. "That man is Dr. Thomas Johnson, MIT graduate, 14 patents. Former principal engineer at Helion Advanced Systems. He designed the core technology my car uses. Today, I'm announcing his appointment as Chief Innovation Officer at Wright Industries." Thomas walked out. Camera flashes erupted. A reporter stood immediately. "Mr. Wright, this seems like a publicity stunt. Where's his resume? His credentials?" Marcus stepped forward with a tablet. "Dr. Johnson's patent portfolio is publicly available. Here's his publication history." He projected it on screen. Pages of technical papers, patents, industry awards. The list kept scrolling. Another journalist. "If he's so accomplished, why was he homeless?" Thomas leaned toward the microphone. "False accusations, corporate politics, racial bias. I was cleared of all charges, but my reputation was destroyed anyway. Nobody would hire me." "Why didn't you defend yourself publicly?" "I tried. Nobody listened." Thomas's voice was steady. "I sent 62 job applications. Got 3 responses, all rejections. When you're accused, even falsely, the stain doesn't wash off." A third journalist, younger. "What changed?" "Someone gave me a chance to prove what I could do. That's all it took." Marcus advanced the projection. Now it showed video from the 4th Street Shelter. Thomas, sitting on a bench, surrounded by children, drawing phase diagrams with sidewalk chalk, explaining molecular structures. A little girl, Maya, watching with absolute attention. "Dr. Johnson spent 3 years homeless," Marcus said. "He never stopped being an engineer. He taught science to children. He studied advanced technology in public libraries. He didn't lose his mind. The system lost him." The room went silent. A veteran reporter in the back stood. "Mr. Johnson, what do you say to other people in your situation?" Thomas thought for a moment. "That brilliance doesn't disappear because you lose your address. That knowledge doesn't vanish because you can't afford rent. And that the world needs to stop equating worth with appearance. What's your first priority at Wright Industries?" Thomas glanced at Anthony. "Building a system that doesn't lose people like me in the first place." Another reporter. "Can you elaborate?" "Not yet, but watch this space." The conference ended. Journalists crowded forward with questions. Thomas answered a few, then stepped back. Too many voices. Too many cameras. Outside, he found Marcus waiting. "That went well," Marcus said. "Did it? The footage of you teaching kids? That was my idea. People needed to see who you really are." Thomas looked at him. "Who am I?" "Someone who never stopped caring, even when the world stopped caring about you." Thomas had no response to that. His phone buzzed. Anthony had given him one yesterday, a text from an unknown number. "Dr. Johnson, this is Sarah Chen from your notebook. I saw the press conference. Is the offer real?" Thomas stared at the message. Then he typed back, "Yes, and you're next." The board meeting was scheduled for Thursday. Closed doors, mahogany table, 8 board members who'd built Wright Industries into a $3 billion company. Thomas sat beside Anthony. He'd learned in 3 weeks that money didn't guarantee acceptance. "Gentlemen, Ms. Valdez," Anthony began, "you've read my proposal." Robert Chen, board chairman, set down his glasses. "We have concerns. Express them. This is PR suicide. We're appointing a homeless man, former homeless," Anthony corrected, "to a C-suite position. Our shareholders will panic. Our competitors will mock us. And frankly, we need more than viral videos and sentiment." Patricia Valdez nodded. "I was at the investor summit. Dr. Johnson is clearly knowledgeable. But what's his track record over the past 3 years? How do we know he can lead teams, manage budgets, deliver results?" Thomas had expected this. "You want proof I can still perform?" "With all respect, yes." "Fair enough." Thomas opened his laptop. "Pull diagnostics on every Wright Industries cooling system deployed since 2020. Every data center, every manufacturing facility, every vehicle in your fleet." The board members exchanged glances. "That's proprietary operational data," Robert said. "I'm Chief Innovation Officer. I have access." Anthony nodded to Marcus, who was present as Chief Operations Officer. Marcus pulled up the systems on the main screen. Thomas stood, walked to the screen, started typing commands. "Your Dallas data center. Cooling efficiency dropped 9% in the last 6 months. You attributed it to seasonal variation. Wrong. You have a micro leak in the tertiary coolant loop. Bay 7, server rack 42. Cost you about $18,000 in excess energy consumption." Marcus checked the maintenance logs. His face changed. "We had an unexplained power spike in Dallas, September through November." Thomas continued. "Phoenix manufacturing plant. Your primary cooling array shows optimal diagnostics, but your backup system is running 15% over normal cycle time. That means your primary system is compensating for a failing component. If primary fails, backup won't handle the load. You'll lose the entire production line for 6 days minimum." Robert pulled up the Phoenix data on his tablet, scrolled. "How did you—" "Shanghai Distribution Center. Your coolant mixture ratio is off by 0.7%. Seems minor, but at your scale, that's 42,000 in waste annually, plus accelerated wear on your compressors." Thomas turned to face the board. "London office HVAC system has a control algorithm inefficiency. Berlin facilities backup generators are overcooling, wasting energy. Your entire company vehicle fleet, 23 cars, is using cooling systems with the same valve defect that stranded Anthony 3 weeks ago. You just haven't hit critical failure yet." He sat down. "That's 3.2 million in preventable failures and waste. I identified it in 20 minutes. Want me to keep going?" The room was silent. Patricia Valdez looked at Robert Chen, then at Anthony. "What's his accuracy rate on these predictions?" she asked Marcus. Marcus typed rapidly, cross-referenced Thomas's findings with actual system data, maintenance logs, energy reports. 97%, Marcus said quietly. "Everything he said is verifiable." Robert Chen removed his glasses, cleaned them slowly. "Welcome to Wright Industries, Dr. Johnson." The email arrived on a Monday morning. Thomas was in his new office, still adjusting to having walls, a door, a desk, when Marcus knocked. "You need to see this." The subject line read, "Helion Advanced Systems, Public Statement." Thomas opened it. "Helion Advanced Systems acknowledges that our 2022 internal investigation into Dr. Thomas R. Johnson was mishandled. Dr. Johnson was wrongfully subjected to professional damage based on unsubstantiated allegations. We failed him. We apologize publicly and unreservedly. Below that, Helion has reached a settlement agreement with Dr. Johnson, including full back pay, damages, and a public retraction of all accusations." Thomas read it twice. "They're covering themselves," Marcus said. "Your appointment made headlines. Their current clients started asking questions. Bad optics." "I never filed a lawsuit." "Your lawyer did, last week. Wrongful termination, defamation, discrimination. The press picked it up Friday." Thomas hadn't hired a lawyer. His phone rang. "Anthony." "Did you see it?" "Yes." "Your settlement check is being processed. $850,000. Back pay, damages, legal fees covered separately." Thomas sat down. $850,000. More money than he'd seen in his entire career. "I want to do something with it," Thomas said. "It's yours. Do whatever you want." "Not whatever. Something specific." 3 days later, Thomas stood in front of the 4th Street shelter, the building where he'd slept for 3 years. Mrs. Patterson, the director, stood beside him. "You're sure about this?" she asked. "Completely." Thomas handed her a check, $500,000. "This establishes the Second Chance Innovation Lab, a workspace for people with advanced skills who've lost access to traditional employment, engineers, scientists, programmers, free access to tools, technology, mentorship." Mrs. Patterson stared at the check. "Thomas, this is not charity. Investment. These people have knowledge worth millions. They just need a door back in." She wiped her eyes. "Where will you house it?" "Here. The shelter's basement. It's 1,200 square feet. Currently storage. We renovate, equip it, open in 3 months." "Who will staff it?" "Me. Sarah Chen. She's joining Wright Industries next week as electrical systems lead. Marcus is volunteering evenings. Dr. Helena Chen agreed to mentor remotely." Mrs. Patterson looked at the building, at Thomas. "You could have bought a house." "I will. Small one. Don't need much." Thomas smiled. "I slept on a cot for 3 years. Anything's an upgrade." The press conference was scheduled for that afternoon. Outside the shelter, cameras were already setting up. This time, Thomas had called them. When the announcement went live, the response was immediate. 700 emails in the first hour. Other cities asking about replication. 3 universities offering partnerships. 12 companies pledging matching funds. Thomas's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. One text stood out, from a number he didn't recognize. "This is David Brennan. I saw the news. I'm sorry. I was wrong about everything." Thomas read it, deleted it. Some apologies came too late to matter. He had work to do. 6 months later, the Second Chance Innovation Lab opened its doors. The basement had been transformed. White walls, LED lighting, workbenches equipped with oscilloscopes, 3D printers, thermal imaging cameras. A small library of technical manuals lined one wall. 12 workstations, each with a high-performance computer. Thomas stood at the entrance, watching people arrive. Sarah Chen came first. Electrical engineer, UC Berkeley PhD, now Wright Industries lead systems architect. She'd spent 14 months homeless after a divorce drained her savings, and a mental health crisis destroyed her professional network. "I still can't believe this is real," she said. "Believe it," Thomas replied. Marcus Rivera arrived next. Chemical engineer from Georgia Tech, lost his career after whistleblowing on unsafe practices at his former company. blacklisted, homeless for 9 months. Now he worked Wright Industries' materials division and volunteered at the lab 3 evenings a week. By noon, all 12 inaugural participants had gathered. Jennifer Williams, materials scientist. Derek Foster, software architect. Amira Hassan, biomedical engineer. 8 others, each with advanced degrees and years of experience. Each had lived without homes, without hope. "Welcome," Thomas began. "You're here because you have knowledge this world needs. Someone decided you weren't worth listening to. They were wrong." He walked to the whiteboard. "This lab has one purpose: build things that matter. We have funding for 6 months. After that, we sustain ourselves through patents, contracts, and products. We're not a charity, we're a company." Sarah raised her hand. "What do we work on?" "Whatever you want. With one condition. It has to solve a real problem." The first month, they struggled. Old habits die hard. Derek couldn't focus, used to shelter schedules that demanded you be out by 7 a.m. Amira had panic attacks in the enclosed space, too many memories of sleeping outside. Thomas worked alongside them, patient, present. By month 3, things shifted. Marcus and Jennifer developed a low-cost cooling system for medical equipment. Current hospital-grade systems cost $15,000 per unit. Their design, $1,200, same performance. They filed the patent jointly. Derek built predictive software for thermal management in data centers, reducing energy waste by 18%. 2 companies requested demos. Sarah designed a compact power regulation system for electric vehicles. Wright Industries licensed it immediately. By month 6, the lab had generated 3 patents, secured 2 commercial contracts totaling $1.2 million, and achieved financial sustainability. The ribbon-cutting ceremony drew 200 people. Thomas's mother came. She'd flown from Atlanta, moving slowly with her cane. When she saw him in front of the lab, wearing a clean suit, healthy, she cried, "I never stopped believing," she whispered. "Not once." "I know, Mama." Maya was there too, the little girl from the park. 8 years old now, gap-toothed smile. "Mr. Thomas, are you still teaching?" "Every Tuesday. You coming?" "Always?" The mayor spoke. Patricia Valdez from Wright Industries board announced a $1 million expansion grant. Local news cameras captured everything. But the moment that mattered most came at the end. A young man approached Thomas, nervous, thin, worn jacket. "Dr. Johnson, I'm Carlos Mendez. Mechanical engineering, Cal Poly. I've been homeless 8 months. I heard about the lab. Is there still room?" Thomas looked at him, saw himself 3 years ago. "There's always room," Thomas said. "When can you start?" "Now?" Now works. 9 months after the lab opened, the ripple effects became undeniable. Thomas sat in a congressional hearing room, Washington, D.C., testifying before the House Committee on Science and Technology. "Dr. Johnson," the committee chair began, "your Second Chance Innovation Lab has placed 147 formerly homeless individuals into technical positions. Can you explain your model?" Thomas leaned toward the microphone. "It's simple. We identify people with advanced skills who've been excluded from traditional employment. We provide workspace, tools, mentorship. They produce valuable work. Companies hire them based on demonstrated ability, not resumes." "What's your success rate?" 89% job retention after 6 months. Our participants have generated 42 patents, $18 million in combined salaries, and contributed to projects that saved companies over $50 million in operational costs. A congresswoman from Oregon spoke. "You're saying we have highly skilled people living on our streets?" "Thousands. Engineers, scientists, doctors, lawyers, lost to addiction, mental health crises, wrongful termination, discrimination, medical debt. Their knowledge doesn't vanish. We just stop seeing it." The hearing lasted 3 hours. By the end, the committee had drafted preliminary legislation, the overlooked Talent Recovery Act, federal funding for innovation labs in 20 cities, tax incentives for companies hiring from these programs, grants for skills verification and placement services. Thomas left the Capitol exhausted but hopeful. The program expanded faster than anyone predicted. Chicago opened a lab in March, Boston in April, 7 more cities by August. Each followed Thomas's model. No handouts, just access. Participants worked on real projects, generated real value, earned real positions. The numbers spoke clearly. Across all locations, 312 people placed in jobs. Average starting salary, $58,000. Combined economic contribution, $34 million annually. Patents filed, 67. Products launched, 19. Wright Industries became the largest employer of lab graduates, 43 hires in 12 months. Anthony made it company policy. Interview anyone the lab endorsed, evaluate on skill alone. Other companies followed, tech firms, manufacturing, aerospace. The model proved itself repeatedly. Overlooked talent, given opportunity, outperformed traditional hires in innovation and problem-solving. Media coverage multiplied. Forbes ran a feature. The homeless engineer who rebuilt an industry. NPR profiled Sarah Chen. 60 Minutes filmed a segment at the original lab. But the real impact showed in smaller moments. Marcus Rivera testified at a California state hearing about whistleblower protections. His story, losing his career for exposing safety violations, living homeless, finding redemption through the lab, changed minds. The legislation passed. Jennifer Williams spoke at Northwestern, her alma mater. 20 students approached afterward, asking how they could help expand the program. 3 became volunteer mentors. Derek Foster launched a nonprofit, Code Haven, teaching programming to homeless youth using the lab model. 5 cities signed on in 6 months. The circle kept growing. One afternoon, Thomas received an email from Dr. Helena Chen. Thomas, MIT wants to create a partnership with your labs. Full curriculum integration. Students spend 1 semester working alongside lab participants. Learning not just engineering, but humanity. Interested? Thomas called her immediately. Yes. I knew you'd say that. There's something else. The board wants to establish the Thomas Johnson Fellowship. Full scholarship for students who've experienced homelessness. You'd oversee selection. Thomas was quiet for a moment. Helena, I fixed a car. That's all I did. No, she said gently. You fixed a system. There's a difference. That evening, Thomas walked through the original lab. Participants working late, bent over projects, arguing about solutions, laughing. The basement that had once stored broken furniture now housed brilliance. Carlos Mendez, the young man from the ribbon cutting, was leading a design review. His thermal regulation prototype had attracted interest from 3 manufacturers. Thomas watched from the doorway, unseen. This was the work. The morning starts with the sound of brakes. Right outside the 4th Street bus stop, an old sedan stalls. A thin line of smoke slips from under the hood. Traffic slows. Faces tighten. Someone leans on a horn. Thomas stands a few steps away, a paper cup of coffee in his hand. Old jacket. Clean. Shoes still worn at the edges. He doesn't move toward the car. A young man stands by the driver's door, phone in hand. Battery flashing red. He looks around, unsure who to ask. No one stops. Thomas watches the heat rise, listens to the uneven idle. Old instincts surface, counting beats, tracing causes. Before he says a word, someone else steps forward. Let me take a look. The voice is young, calm, steady. Carlos Mendez, gray hoodie, backpack slung over one shoulder, a thin notebook tucked under his arm, pages bent from use. He lifts the hood, doesn't talk much, just looks, then points. This hose is cracked. Not bad, but enough to bleed pressure. The driver blinks. You sure? Carlos nods. It'll hold, long enough to get you somewhere safe. A coffee vendor hands over heat-resistant tape. Someone else brings cold water. Small gestures, one after another, no one directing them. Thomas stays where he is, watching, silent. Carlos works quickly, hands steady. When the engine turns over again, the sound is smoother. The smoke fades. The driver exhales. Thank you. How do I repay you? Carlos shakes his head. You don't. Just stop next time someone needs help. He steps back, turns, meets Thomas's eyes. Just a nod. No praise, no performance. Thomas looks on as Carlos walks away. His hand slips into his coat pocket. Loose coins touch. Clinking softly, a sound from another life. Same street, same hesitation from the crowd. But this time, it isn't him stepping forward. The circle closes, then opens again. If you were standing there today, would you walk past or step in?